Hey, welcome to the 1620 Today podcast, episode number 3. I'm your host, Jack Gately, and our beautiful co-host,
Beth Gately.
How you doing, Beth?
Good today. Nice Monday.
It's really good to squeeze today's episode in because tomorrow you're heading to...
I could tell you, but
It's classified.
Yeah, classified.
She's
No.
not. She won't be here.
I'm getting a break.
Well deserved.
Thanks.
A little trip.
I don't know about that, but
Yeah. How'd you get this?
have fun. We have one senior who's on his own doing his thing, but the sophomore will need some rides.
I'll be Mr. Mom this week. But before we get into that starting tomorrow, I'd love to introduce our guest for today, the Vice Chairwoman of the Board of Selectmen. Can you say that? That doesn't even seem to make sense. Our guest today is Betty Cavacco. Welcome to the show, Betty. How are you today?
Thank you. I am well. Thank you for having me.
Good to have you. This is the first time we've ever met.
Right, and we've
In
talked
person.
a million times.
Exactly.
Partly because of the whole virus thing for the last 2 years.
Right.
But it's great to have you on the show. Thank you for coming in. I know it's kind of like an experiment.
Yeah.
And, we won't put you on the spot that much, but maybe
Yeah,
just a
it'll be
teeny
fun.
bit.
I'm on the spot every day,
I know,
so it
this is
doesn't
nothing.
really make a difference.
It probably won't be any worse than anything else. I know that Beth had a question she wanted to start right off the show.
Oh, I was just, I've been reading a lot about the racetrack that they're proposing, and I wasn't really sure how you felt about it. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, here's
Subject.
obviously it's a very touchy subject. It's very emotional for people, and I can completely understand, but it really is more about a process. I personally don't agree with horse racing, but that's not my call anymore. So, I mean, I can give you the same example is that I didn't agree with marijuana facilities. But, since they voted and they want it, that's my job, is to make sure. And I have never voted against those type facilities. I mean, I guess good and bad. There are a lot of people that want it, and there are a lot of people that don't. Right now, the people that don't are a little bit louder. Obviously, we have a non-binding ballot question among with a few others, so we'll see how it goes. I mean, to me personally, if I weren't a selectman, I wouldn't support it. But I don't really have that luxury anymore. So I guess we'll wait and see how it goes. I mean, it is a process. We've done a process like this with every other development, even before my time. I mean, we had the Pine Hills and, Hollywood East and all those other things that I wasn't involved in, but it's the same process.
So the non-binding question is this May at the town election on the 21st.
Correct.
So I would just seek a little clarity of what you just said. I didn't really understand what you just said. Are you for this or against it? When you go to vote, let's just say on the 21st, Betty's in the sanctity of her vote. He's got a little ballot, and you're circling little bubbles. How are you going to vote on that? Would you tell us?
Yeah, I mean, if it's just horse racing, which what it is, I will vote against it.
Okay, so that's pretty clear. All right.
Yeah, but this is Betty, the resident, not Betty, the selectman. There's a process that we have to go through, and that's kind of what they did. And it's kind of, it's disheartening just because people just think it's going to be horse racing. And that was the basis of their RFP supposedly, well, not supposedly, it was. But I don't think it's the only option, so.
Would you be more inclined to support something which was development only on the commercial portion of the parcel?
I certainly would.
Okay. How do you feel about the county still being involved? Because the plan is not for the county to sell this property, but actually to lease it. And the way I look at that is if there's a failure of the project, then there's a way to dump some cost onto the county. And I don't think anyone's really brought that up, but I can see that totally. The county sees this as a way to kind of perpetuate itself like a bureaucracy would. But I can also see if, heaven forbid, this is a failure from an economic point of view, some of those costs can be offloaded on the county, and then, of course, that means the taxpayer.
Yeah, and I don't really know how all of that will come into play. I'm not concerned, but I'm questioning whether the project moves forward completely, because in some of the information that I've seen, if, let's just say, Boston South pulls out and doesn't want any part of it, I would like the town to have the opportunity to purchase that property. I'm very much into open space. I don't like the development that we have. I'm completely against any more residential development, but that's, again, people have a right to do what they want on their property. So, residential development costs a lot of money in infrastructure and all that other stuff. So, I would like to, if that fails before it goes anywhere else, I would like the town to have the opportunity to purchase that.
Did you have a follow-up on that?
No,
No?
excuse me.
Go ahead.
Nope. Just
So I can hear a little bit of hedge, no pun intended, in your answer there that, as a selectman, you might vote a little bit differently. Is that, so like when I hear that, I wonder, like, is there a concern about the fiscal condition of the town? Does the town need this revenue? What is the fiscal condition of the town right now? I mean,
Well-
you're the vice chairwoman of, you should have a pretty good handle on that, right?
Right, so the fiscal condition of the town, we're in pretty good shape, fiscally, financially. But the problem is that we have our taxpayers that, most of the burden is from residential tax base. And the only way that we can stabilize it is with more commercial tax base. So do I think the process of having a horse track is what's gonna fix it? No. But I would never support anything that the residents don't support. But there has to be, it can't only be the loudest people in the room. There has to be something, if there's a non-binding question, which there will be, and I don't necessarily believe this is the time for it, I would have rather have waited until November, because there would be more details and plans. Because this organization doesn't even know if they can put a horse track on there, because they have so many other things that they have to do prior to, coming up with a final plan. And you have to remember, the RFP isn't to the town of Plymouth. The RFP is to the county. So, do we need commercial development? Yes, we do. To maximize what we can release from our burden of the taxpayer. But I would never, and I don't think anybody on the board would ever vote for something that our residents absolutely, without hesitation, don't want.
And just from a technical point of view, we cannot have a municipal ballot question in November because it's not a municipal election, and so we're having it in May.
Correct. And unfortunately, when I asked the town clerk, they said that we could have it in November. That's why the discussion was either November and May, or May. And after that point is when they said, nope, you can't have it.
Looked into the fine print.
Correct.
Okay.
So-
So these things, the election law can be really particular, for sure. So it's May, and you're voting no. Okay. So you think the health of the town is strong, but you'd rather see if we could get some residential taxpayer mitigation.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
No more residential development, more commercial development.
correct.
The town manager situation, which you've been involved with quite a bit, Betty.
Yes,
There was a motion to cut your salaries to zero recently at the town meeting.
correct.
The salary for selectmen is $4,000, right?
Yes,
And are there benefits with that?
no,
No, so you don't get health care or anything else?
No.
It's $4,000, that's it.
Or we could say, like my husband says, 9 cents an hour.
9 cents an hour, all right. So to me, we have a kind of a weird situation where we have a brand new town manager. I can't pronounce the guy's name.
Derek Brandisi.
Okay, thank you for bailing me out.
Yep.
But we also have the former town manager who's now like a special assistant or something like that.
Correct. Special assistant.
Baseball analogy ways, I kind of feel like the town has they fired the existing manager, but then made him the third base coach. And then they have a new manager, and like I kind of like when you come in as a new manager, you kind of don't want the old manager hanging around. You know, like why would you want him like, you know, in the wings as the third base coach? And like that to me like is a mixed message. So is she staying for that much longer, or what's the plan here?
No, she leaves in July. And honestly, it was a couple of things. We wanted to really put our house in order. So she was concentrating on our whole tech negotiations, which are tumultuous at best. And she's reviewing all of our policies, committees, bylaws, and all that. And she'll come back to us with her final, you know, this should be this should be that. Right now we have 68 or 69 committees. And that's a lot of committees to try to not control, but that's a lot of committees and a lot of information. So I think she's looking at, you know, different ways to kind of put that more into perspective of what the goals are. And the selectmen do have goals. I mean, we have goals. We know what we want. One of my goals, I'm so excited, was a grant writer. So
You got a big grant recently for Long Beach.
Correct.
Tell us
Right.
about that. Somebody asked me the $25 million. And
Yep.
So what's that going to be?
So that is basically all the work on Long Beach for seawalls and everything. And it's something that our Marine and Environmental Director, David Gould, he's applied for that grant a few years from what I understand, but with no luck. And all of a sudden this year it came through. So, you know, we're very excited. David Gould does great work with grants and stuff like that. So, but now that we have this grant writer, we're hoping to get more revenue in places that we weren't able to get before.
Is there any chance that town could buy Burt's, tear it down, and create something that would be like a miniature park or something?
We're trying. We've reached out to the owners, and, you know, they're not really, I guess, not interested, but
It's for sale though, or it has been?
no, it's for rent.
It's for rent.
It's for rent,
Yes.
leasing.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, and I can't imagine, I mean, I've walked down there, the damage is significant.
It is
I mean,
really
it
bad
really,
right now.
that poor building gets hammered every single storm that we have.
We had a storm, I don't remember what it was, December or whatever, and it was one of these like well forecast storms.
Mm-hmm.
So I went down there and took a before picture. And like 2 days later I went down and took the after picture. And it was like, whoa.
Yeah, I mean, I
then
would love to see the building torn down, more parking, you know.
Picnic bench or something.
Yeah, exactly.
You can't
So-
really build anything
Right.
because it's going to get washed away. So you got to build something that's going to be like anchored,
Yeah.
low profile.
Yeah, absolutely.
That is, it's such a beautiful like area, and every time you drive down, it's just so sad to see. It's just
It
you know,
is.
Mother Nature, but if they could
And
definitely
even
put
now,
something there.
it's like there's rubble everywhere, and
Really?
it just takes away from the beauty
know.
of that area, so. But I think I'll bring that up again tomorrow night at our meeting to see if we've gotten anywhere.
Okay. Of course, the town could force them to sell. There's that option.
I don't know how we would be able to do
Well,
that.
there's eminent domain.
Yeah, but eminent domain really has to be for like public safety.
Public good, a
Public
park.
good, I know, but you know, the town tries not to be that strong arm people don't like it when you tell people what to do with their property.
That's true. Yeah, I'm not a big fan of it myself, being in
Right.
real estate.
Right.
But I mean, this is one of those things where, like, whoa, this. If there was ever a perfect example of eminent domain
Right.
opportunity, it would be this complete eyesore.
Right. And I can't disagree with that.
So, talk about outdoors.
Yeah, I was wondering, so I'm noticing all the outdoor dining up on Main Street and Court Street have been, everybody's been putting out their, I don't even know what you call those structures.
Parklets.
Parklets?
Yes.
Oh, that's cute. With, all the restrictions being lifted, do you think this is something that's going to be permanent? I know the people seem to love it. I
and that-
personally
yeah.
sat outside there and, having the cars go by was not the best thing.
Yeah.
But, I was just wondering if you think that might be something that that's going to stick around.
I think it will. I mean, we have the Outdoor Task Force Dining Committee. Selectman Helm he's the one that facilitates that. I mean, when COVID first started, some of the local business people actually did this plan and put it together for these parklets so everything would look, uniform and it would be pretty. And it didn't go anywhere because they were actually asking that these business owners foot the bill for these parklets. And with this outdoor task force, we used $80,000 of ARPA funds. And so the town is putting.
Well, that's free money. That just comes from the government in Washington, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Free.
Sure.
But, it looks nice. It's going to be uniform. It's, I mean, I don't know your thoughts. I would drive by and I hated seeing those plastic barriers and,
Oh, the wooden barriers that you have up now are 1,000 times
they sure are.
cosmetically better.
Yeah, and there's going to be fresh flowers and all that on them. That the process isn't done yet.
Right.
But I mean, people love outdoor dining. I'm like
Absolutely.
Beth. I don't want to smell a car, look at a car, hear a car.
Yeah.
But you know what? If the people want it, hey, more power to it.
Well, from a restaurant's point of view, the restaurants is all about number of seats you can have.
Right.
And so it expands their capacity, even if it's, 5% or 7% or whatever, that's more revenue for the restaurant, making the restaurant
Oh,
bigger.
absolutely.
Right.
Has there ever been a discussion, because in downtown Boston on Newbury Street,
All right.
there's been a number of pilot projects, and especially last year, where they've gone all pedestrian. And has
But
there
only certain days, right?
Yeah.
Like pedestrian Sunday. I think
select
they were calling
select
it.
Sundays, has there been a discussion of going select on a pilot basis, maybe like over Labor Day week or some weekend, would just be pedestrian zone?
There hasn't been a discussion that I'm aware of, and I think Harry, if anyone with the outdoor dining, the whole thing, Harry probably would have brought that up to us, but that would definitely be something that we would have to get like buy-in from the businesses down here.
Sure.
I mean, if it's something that they want to see and see a pilot, I say we try everything. One of the biggest things for me is that we're America's hometown. We should be leading and not following, in my opinion. So anything that we want to try, anything that we should try, I think we should.
We could pick a weekend that is maybe
Right.
slightly underperforming,
Yeah.
and
Right.
and then say, this is a pedestrian-free zone. Let's try it out. And I think that's what they did in Newbury. And now I'm pretty sure it's kind of like a semi-regular thing up there.
Nice. Yeah, and you know what? We did that when we did Winterfest. We shut down the street. People loved it. They loved just being able to walk around. And I don't know how that would affect a business, but maybe it's something that the business community wants to have a conversation about and say, hey, let's give it a shot.
Yeah, I think that when we went one way with the street during the first COVID summer, there were some businesses that were really hurt.
Yeah.
And now that we have two-way and outdoor dining, somehow, public safety and everybody's still happy. This is better. The way we have it set up now is better.
Yeah.
But I was just throwing that out as an idea. I think it's something other
Yeah.
places are looking
Right.
at
Right.
and could be like a feature.
Yeah.
You know, not all the time.
Right.
Right, because you have to think about the other businesses that aren't, just dining.
Right. Well, I mean, when you look around, like all these, you go to Hyannis or Newport, and the stuff that they're like business community, they're so like ahead of where we're at. So that's, like I said, that's one of the things, like the events. I mean, we were in Martha's Vineyard and they shut down the street and they had like rock wall climbing for the kids, and they had a little, like a little street kind of party thing, and all the businesses had tents out on the street, and it was mobbed, but Martha's Vineyard always is, but it was pretty cool.
We could build our brand a little bit more, a little stronger,
Correct.
try things out.
Yeah.
So you mentioned Harry Helm, and he's in charge of the Main Street kind of liaison.
Yep.
You're the waterfront liaison.
The harbor. Yes.
Harbor.
Yep.
Of course, Beth and I just talked in our previous podcast number 2, about the Pilgrim Power Plant. You were at the rally
Yep.
down at Wood Seafood about 2 weeks ago. We know your position on that. You don't want them to do that. They had done it in the past. So you're pretty clear on that one. You were on that record on that one, got a lot of media. But what are the other harbor/waterfront things that are going on? I know there's some aquaculture discussion on tomorrow night's
Yep.
agenda. That aquaculture seems to be a really small group of people, but has a significant impact for people's livelihoods.
Right.
What's going on in the harbor?
So, the Harbor Committee, who's like a fabulous group of people that are really professionals in their trade, commercial fishermen, aquaculture, and there's a master plan that they want to follow. And one of the things is that we have voted there's an area in Sakewish that will be oyster farms. I think there's 18 acres. So that will be Plymouth, and the landings will be in Plymouth. So that's a great thing for our aquaculture businesses. There was new docks across from the Tavern on the Wharf, the dredging that was done there. Those docks are going to be called Charter Boat Row. So people will be able to walk down there and see our charter boats, because we do have a charter boat fleet.
Yeah.
So, and if you go to any oceanside community, you always see charter boats, and it's something.
Hyannis has a
Hyannis,
group
yeah.
of them, sure.
Yep. I mean, go to Outer Banks, go to Clearwater, any place like that. So that's really exciting, because, these charter boats captains have been asking for more than a decade about a place for them. So now they're actually going to have that. So, and it's exciting. So some of the changes, that we look at, I mean, we have the new Maritime Center, and I don't know if you've been in there, but it is gorgeous.
No.
It is the new harbor building.
the Harbor
Master.
Master building.
Yeah, it's called the Maritime Center.
Oh, is that what it is?
That's the official name.
Center.
But it's absolutely gorgeous inside.
Oh, I can't wait to
We're waiting for our invite for the open house.
You're invited.
All right. Sorry, caught myself laughing. And of course, we have now the money to redo the Stephensville. You mentioned it a little bit earlier, with the fire station discussion, but Stephensville, when is that happening?
Well, they're waiting. I believe it's out to bid. If it's not out to bid, it's going out to bid fairly quickly. I'm also the liaison to the community preservation. And this has been a project, it's been, I want to say 7-10 years. There have been changes to what it would be, after some of the big storms, the water really came up pretty high, so they wanted to move everything back to, so there's no damage and everything like that. But it's such a great location, and, the new plan has 4 pickleball courts, 4 tennis courts. They have an open area that, that we could put something there if it's, whatever event or something like that. So, and, Bill Cohan, who is the chairman of CPC, he puts a lot of effort into, what he does. So it's going to be great to finally get it done. Residents deserve it. It's a beautiful park, and it's been kind of not ignored, but it should be more than it is.
Time has come.
Yeah.
They used to have a really nice farmer's market there years ago, but is that still, have they been doing that lately?
I
think
don't-
we were asking someone that recently.
I don't
And I don't
believe
think they've
so.
had it.
I know
This
they
was a long time
started
ago.
one at Moonrise Cinemas.
Right.
So-
That place is cool.
Yeah.
I haven't been
Wait,
there.
I thought we went. I went with my daughter and her friends. It was really nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love
Who'd
that
you
a lot.
take?
Some little kids.
Oh,
Some
okay.
little girls. I was the only adult. It was pretty boring. No, it was fine. It was really fun there. I
You've
liked
got
it.
the election coming up.
Right.
Okay, so
yeah.
we talked about the ballot question.
Yep.
Any endorsements?
Would you like to make some news right now and tell us anybody you're endorsing on the ballot this springtime?
I would not.
Betty, come on, why'd you cut? You got to make some news here.
I make news every day.
Yeah.
She gets
There's
enough,
there's a
feedback
lovely
out there.
little group that I said it yesterday, actually. I said to someone, I could send out checks for $1 million and they'd complain where the stamp was.
So let's talk about that. It would probably be our last topic, or second to last topic, maybe. But the social media is a very interesting thing, and unlike probably anybody in town, at any level really, whether it's state or federal officials, for Plymouth, you're probably the strongest elected official on social media in terms of that's where you've staked your name. That's where you've built your name, and you got elected that way and reelected. We don't actually know anything about you so maybe you could just give us in a nutshell, what is the pre-Betty Facebook, pre-Betty select member board woman, man? What did you do before this?
So I actually worked for Entergy for 30 years. I started with Boston Edison in 1979 as a contractor the summer I got out of high school. And I remember going home to my father and said, I am not staying here. And 30 years later, I was still there. I left Pilgrim Station and I went up to the Prudential and I started with collections and then drafting. I was drafting technician.
So you worked at the power plant.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, for, 25 out of my 30 years.
Wow. All right.
So then I retired in 2012.
Now we know how to blame
She
for
probably- she
all
might-
the pollution and everything.
I didn't even know Bob Como. Did you know Bob Como from? He was the chief economist from Boston Edison for years
Yes, he
in the
was.
90s.
Bob Como?
Yeah, he's from the North Shore though.
Old friend of ours.
Yeah,
Yeah.
That's the secret North Shore person.
I am. I'm a transplant.
Secret.
I'm a
Nice.
transplant.
Then I showed her the ocean, and she's like, okay, we can think about moving here.
As long as I'm near the ocean, I'm happy.
It'll be 20 years this next
June,
month.
right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
June 8th or something, yeah.
Something like that.
Something like that.
Nice. So I was a pretty strong union advocate. I actually became a union organizer and traveled around the country for 5-6 years and actually organized unions in different areas for the Utility Workers Union of America. Had some schooling. I went to UMass Boston. Didn't finish. Was going to be a labor attorney. Stupid me. Should have stayed there. But and then did some labor classes at the George Meany School of Labor in Maryland or Washington. So did a lot of that. Loved being a union advocate. I'm always for the underdog. Always have been. And then after I retired, I'll never forget, I got involved in this because the town made me mad when they were going to close down the Manamet Youth Center.
Ah,
Right.
So that was in 2013, 2014. And even though my kids didn't go there, the outcry from the community was like, oh my goodness. So I'll never forget it. I stood up, I went to my first selectmen's meeting, begged them for a stay of execution to not close it down because they didn't notify anyone until 4 days before school started. So
and kids go there after school.
A lot of kids. were
after
going there
school
after
program.
yeah.
So, I mean, it was failing. They didn't have a lot of kids. So they did give that stay of execution. Myself and a bunch of parents got together. We formed a nonprofit. So it was the Friends of Manamit Youth Center. It happened and it changed over to the Plymouth Youth Foundation, which I'm no longer a part of. But you know what? We did a lot. We received Jeeps and raffled them off. We redid we did all new flooring, all new equipment. I think back then, and I'm not sure what it is now, but there was 40 kids in the after-school program, and it jumped up to over 300. So
Yeah, they did a beautiful job.
yeah, and
Down
you
in the
know what?
basement there.
Right, and down in the basement, upstairs.
And they throw great birthday parties.
They do.
It's a good place for a little kid
It's
birthday
It's
party.
such
Yeah.
an inexpensive like
They
birthday
do.
party
So
venue.
that's really how I got involved in politics. And I just realized that, I thought I could help people. And that really is the only reason why I got involved. And I have to say, I know a lot of people reach out to me. A lot of people reach out to me privately. And I can say honestly that I've done everything I've said I was going to do.
Well, let's talk about that. Let's get a little bit deeper on the social media thing. So
Okay.
we just had 2 incidences here in town with businesses. One we can actually, I don't want to point them out, but one of them we can literally see out the window here, and another one is just right around the corner, a pub, and they basically had someone complain about their service, and then there was a huge amount of backlash and hundreds of comments on Facebook. One of the things actually went viral nationwide on Reddit, and people are giving reviews on a business that they had never been. They live in North Carolina. They've never been to Massachusetts,
Right.
and they're trashing this business. And the business had put something that was political on one of their receipts. And so Facebook can seem to you've lived with it, but you've also had some backlash with it. So, and sometimes you say, they're beating me up, but then again, you wouldn't be an elected official without it. So do you regret building such a strong following and also being out there? Sometimes you're like, man, I wish I could just delete my account today.
I actually don't. People, one of the big things that when I came into office is there was no communication. And that was part of my platform. I wanted people to be able to communicate. Now, I don't think I'm anything special. What I think is that someone reaches out to me, whether you like me, whether you hate me, whether you voted for me, whether you'll never vote for me again, whatever the reason is, if you reach out to me, you're going to get an answer. And I think that's what people are desperate for. And the ability to reach out to me on social media is easy. I mean, I usually answer within an hour anyway, depending on what I'm doing. So I think that's important that people know that whatever our relationship is, they're going to get what they need from me. They may not like the answers that I give them.
Yeah, and we don't, just speaking for me, and I assume, politically, we don't agree with you on a lot of stuff. But we feel like if we had an issue, we could call Betty and she'll listen to what she has to say. Oh, Betty, you left the phone on.
I'm sorry.
See, someone's trying to reach her right now.
Happened. Yeah, someone's trying.
I
So
think you just have to have a thick skin and be, most people in politics kind of know that at this point, that you're always going to get someone that's going to be what they call a troll or whatever, and just you have to have a thick skin.
You gotta have a thick
And it comes with age too. I mean, some of that stuff would have made me cry 20 years ago. Now I'm more
I think there's definitely the fact that
Yeah.
nowadays you can do it behind a keyboard in your basement, and
you're a tough guy.
you're a tough guy.
Yeah.
Where
With kids too.
previously you could all be fired up about an issue. You could be really mad at some elected official, but by the time you got to the public meeting, you're like, well, I don't want to make a fool of myself in front of the whole town. So you dial it down a little bit to have some sense of decorum. And I think that the fact that you can do this kind of with a layer of insulation, so to speak, where you're not exactly, you're not speaking in front of the microphone in front of the high school auditorium.
Right.
so you don't dial it down. There's no there's no filter. Where otherwise, if you were in front of the high school microphone with 700 people there, you'd
Clean up your act.
clean up your act a little bit.
Yeah.
Well, and it's, like I've told people, like my children, I mean, they're 16 and 18. They're not allowed on social media. My husband hasn't been on social media because, I mean, some of the things that people say are really hurtful. And, don't agree with me. That's fine. But, and I don't govern to like, oh, if I say this for this one, I'll get their vote. I don't govern like that. I really don't care about votes, honestly. So I think it's difficult that, I think you're right, people, keyboard warriors, and like I said, there's a group of them, and they do it every day, and it's like, I actually feel sorry for them, that this is all they have. If they, you know what though, if they want to attack me, for me, that means they're leaving somebody else alone, so.
Let me ask you this, and it's probably be our last question, unless you have do you think that there's ever been a time on Facebook where you've put something out there and you're like, oh boy, I shouldn't have done that?
Probably nothing that comes like right to mind. I guess I would have to think about it, but you know what I mean? What you see is what you get. And love me, hate me, I mean, I can't, this position doesn't define who I am.
Right.
So, I mean,
In a way, Betty, you're going to hate this.
It does.
But
You're
in a
right.
way, that's kind of like a certain former president, right? He went out there and he was him. He was him, like him or not, no filter. And the transparency of that, it's actually a very similar characteristic that you have, believe it or not. I know, like, you're coming from, I know this is coming from a completely different perspective, but I think people respond to that authenticity, which I think is an important thing. So, did you want to wrap up with anything that we should have asked you? That you were like, I can't believe they didn't ask us about.
I don't think so. Go out, get out and vote May 21st. I mean, one of the big things that we have is, voter empathy. And I think people realize, like, believe it or not, I do not get involved in any other politics except what's right here. Because here is where I know I can make a change. So, I mean, people don't realize how important town politics and town elections are. And, that's really where people need to pay attention. And we have 4 non-binding ballot questions. We have the horse track and 3 for the form of government. So I hope people get out and
We also have some pretty competitive race for
Yep.
school committee and for selectmen.
Yeah.
There's 4 selectmen. I didn't hear anything about, I think there's 2 for school committee.
So I think there's going to be a race for school committee.
Yeah.
Yep.
So, I mean, 4 great candidates.
It's
like
a
I said.
Saturday, vote early and often.
Well, I think it's time that the town starts thinking about changing their elections to maybe a November month. I would like to pursue that and see what people think.
Well, thanks for stopping by today. Appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Betty.
And thank you for joining us for what is now this is a wrap for our 3rd episode of the 1620 Today podcast. I get the word podcast is kind of involved. It's really a
Right,
video show. But you can follow us on YouTube, Spotify, or on Facebook, 1620 Today, all one word. Or you can go to 1620today.com and watch it there. So thank you so much for joining us. We'll be back, I think, next week with another podcast. I'm Jack.
And Beth, thank you so much, Betty. It was great.
Thank you, Betty.
for having me.